Good morning, guys! Today I'm going to be showing you how to make a Princess Leia costume. Just kidding, we're going to be making these cute scrub caps. Why do you need a scrub cap? Maybe you know someone who works in healthcare who could really use one. Maybe you've been spending a little too much time on YouTube learning how to cut and dye your own hair, and now you need to hide what you've done. I am not here to judge. I've been watching YouTube tutorials myself. This was really weird to sleep in, by the way. Let's see if it worked. In case you haven't noticed, I have some pretty long hair. Like, really long hair. You can't just stuff all this into a normal sized scrub cap. I guess it got okay. Minus all the fuzzies from the terry cloth. I mean, this is a lot of hair. That's where Libby's tutorial comes in.
Listen, are you gonna get on with the tutorial or not?
Excuse me?
Well, they didn't come here to watch you fluff your hair.
Alright, I'm going. I saw that! For the supplies, you will need 1 fat quarter of main fabric, some bias binding, which you can use store-bought, or you can make your own by cutting 2.5-inch strips of fabric on the bias, sewing them together to create one long piece, and then folding that in half. Done. You also need 2 strips of contrast fabric that are 2 inches by the width of the fabric, and some elastic. I used about 7 inches of 1/4-inch elastic, but you can definitely use less. Take your fat quarter and fold it in half. Then take a plate and... Wait a minute. Is she trying to get me to eat Vegemite again? No thanks, Libby. Anyway, take your snack-free plate and use it to help curve 2 of the edges that aren't on the fold. Take 1 strip of the contrast fabric, pin the right side or the pretty side of the contrast strip to the wrong side of the top non-curved edge of the main fabric. My fabric just happens to have the pattern on both sides of the fabric, but basically you're gonna have both your pieces of fabric with the wrong sides up. Then sew along the edge using a 1/4-inch seam allowance. Press the seam towards the main fabric and then understitch on the wrong side of the main fabric. Press the contrast strip to the front and also fold under a 1/4-inch of the raw edge of the contrast strip. Top stitch along both long edges of the contrast fabric. This is what it'll look like. Now take your bias binding and press one end in about 1/2 inch. Place your fabric right side up and then line up the raw edge of the bias binding with the raw edge of the main piece of fabric. Pin that all the way around. When you reach the end of the main piece of fabric, cut about 1/2 inch beyond the edge. Then fold the raw edge in so it lines up with the edge of the contrast strip. Sew all around the edge using a 1/4-inch seam allowance. Take your time around the corners and make sure everything's nice and smooth. I took some pinking shears and clipped around the curve to help everything lay a little bit flatter. Press the bias binding towards the wrong side of the scrub cap. It's going to be a little bulky along the curves, but just try to keep it as flat as you can. Pin the bias binding down and then top stitch it to the wrong side of the scrub cap. You're going to have to take your time around the curves, and there's going to be some small puckers, but it's okay because it's on the inside of the cap. Give everything a good press. Now we're going to work on the ties. Take that other long contrast strip of fabric and cut it in half. Fold in the edges you just cut about 1/2 inch and press. You don't have to do anything with the other short edge because it's part of the selvage and it's going to get tucked inside of the main cap anyway. Then press about 1/4 inch over on both long sides of each strip. Fold each strip in half, press, and pin it in place. Put one end of the elastic into one selvage end of the tie strip. Top stitch along all the sides of the tie, making sure to go over the elastic a few times. Do this for both sides and your tie is complete. Attach a safety pin to one end of the tie strip and thread that through the casing you created from the bias binding. Keep feeding the whole thing through until you start to see the elastic coming out the other side. Push the tie back until the edge is hidden inside the casing, and stitch over that a few times to keep it secure. Do that for both sides. This is your finished project, which looks pretty much like an old-fashioned bonnet. Let's try this out. So my ponytail's right here. All my hair is tucked up in. Okay, so we're gonna take this, tie it at the bottom, tie a bow up top, done. All my hair is up in here. And if you really want, tie the bow up top too. I'm gonna send a couple pictures to Libby for approval. And that is it. That is how you sew a scrub cap using my dear friend Libby's tutorial. Check out her blog. I'll leave the link below.